Hello everyone, welcome back to the podcast where today Toby and I are going to be doing our final Premier League predictions now that the transfer window is over and we've had the benefit of watching the first three games of the new season. Shall we get straight into Toby? We've got lots to talk about. We'll start off with the relegation contenders, and do you feel particularly strongly about anyone?
Yeah, I think this year there's a few teams who are going to be in and around there. So let's just jump in probably, well, you'd assume who I would be most confident that I think are going to go down with my team, who I've got in 20th, and that unfortunately is Burnley. Out of the newly promoted sides, I just think they are probably the least exciting going forward. They have the least amount of attacking firepower. I think they've probably got the weakest squad in the league. And also with Scott Parker as a manager, somebody who hasn't had much success at all in the Premier League so far in his managerial career. I just think compared to the other newly promoted sides and the other Premier League sides from last season who are maybe having a bit of a drop off, I just think Burnley lack quite a bit of quality compared to those other sides, and I think that's been seen in the first few games this season.
And you know what? I have to say that I had a strong feeling we're going to be Burnley, and that's because I also agree with you. I think, despite the fact that they have already got a win, which I think is great for morale and confidence, they've got some experience at that side with Walker, Dubravka, and other players with the likes of Connor Roberts, Joe Worrell, Joe Cullen, who've already played in the Premier League. And they've got some young, exciting players like Estiva, Hardman, Ugochukwu, Hannibal Magebury as well. But like I said, I completely agree with you. I think they do lack quality, and I don't think I can see them scoring enough goals to stay in the league. And despite their impressive record in the Championship, I do think that defensively they are going to be exposed coming up against opposition who are a lot stronger than they are. So yeah, I think that's quite an obvious one in 20th place. But, I'm here for Burnley if they want to surprise us. When it comes to 19th, I think already we're maybe starting to talk differently about the newly promoted sides. And I've actually gone for Leeds United in 19th. I think they have started really well. I think that they've got 4 points already from the opening three games, which is a really good return. But honestly, I'm a bit worried about them going forward. They've only scored one goal, and that was a penalty against Everton in the opening game. Got hammered by Arsenal 5-0. And then they obviously had the 0 draw against depleting Newcastle, which I thought they probably could have done a little bit better in. I just don't see them creating enough goals. I don't see them scoring enough goals. And I'm not sure about Daniel Farke either, if I'm being honest. So I've got Leeds United in 19th. Well, maybe not where you've got Leeds, but who have you got in 19th?
No, I think I'll go for where I've got Leeds because it's very, very close to yours. I have got them in 18th, actually. I think they will offer a little bit more than maybe I would have expected going into the season. Now I've actually watched them in a few games, and I think, like you said, they're actually a lot more solid and a lot better defensively than maybe I would have thought. I think I would have been looking at some of their players like Gnonto and sort of Calvert-Lewin that they've signed recently, and maybe thought that their attack would be their strongest side. But I actually think their midfield and defensive unit looks pretty decent, and I think it could help them out in some games. But I do also agree with you that I just think, in terms of going forward, I think they will struggle to score some goals. And between Leeds and Burnley, both of them, I just don't think they're going to be able to score enough goals to keep them up, essentially. So because we are going for a combined table together, if we can, I've got Leeds in 18th, you've got them in 19th. Shall we see who we've got in those other relegation positions, then maybe see where things line up?
We can absolutely do that, yes. So I haven't got the other newly promoted side, which is something which is quite different to what I thought at the start of the season, because I don't have Sunderland there. I've got another team. Do you have Sunderland getting relegated?
I do have Sunderland in 19th. Yeah, unfortunately, I've gone boring. I've gone for all three promoted sides, following the trend of the last few seasons.
No, that's fair enough. I can see absolutely why you might have gone for Sunderland. In that case, though, since we have a difference, we put Leeds United in 19th.
Yeah.
And then we'll debate it, because I have Sunderland staying up and I actually have Wolverhampton Wanderers going down. So the reason why I wouldn't necessarily have Sunderland is because I actually think that what I've seen from them in the first three games and in the transfer window as well, the signings that they made, I think they have the potential to stay up in the Premier League. Not necessarily saying they are going to stay up in the league, because it's still a very difficult task, despite the fact that they've done really well getting 6 points from the opening three games. But I really look at that side and I think to myself, they could really make a fist of it. I'm looking at the forward line, and I think to myself, they've got enough goals between them. I really like the signings of I really like signing good Brobby as well, and I'm not sure I'm saying his name right, but Gertruda as well from RB Leipzig, the right back, centre back who Liverpool were linked with previously as well. So I was watching him, and I think he's gonna be great for them. And I also think they got goals. I mean, the likes of Adingra, Mayenda, Talbib. I honestly think that they can score enough goals. The midfield is so good with the likes of Xhaka, Siddiqui, and Diarra, and like talking about the players like Enzo Lafay as well, who's not even starting for them in that midfield at the moment. They've got enough that they can be solid at the back and be good going forward. They've overperformed their XG, which is something that is kind of worrying, especially the first game when they won 3-0. I did look at that and think to myself, all these goals are great goals, but is this going to happen on a regular basis? But I don't see why Sunderland couldn't stay up in the Premier League. And if I think to myself that if they weren't a newly promoted side, would I think they would go back down? I don't think I would. And for me, I think they have a little bit more than the team that I do have going down in Wolverhampton Wanderers. So why do you think they are going to go down?
Yeah, I really like a lot of their signings. I just think maybe there's too many, and I think at the moment it's working because it's exciting and it's fresh and it's new, and I think it's a lot of teams coming up against them at the moment aren't quite expecting them to be as progressive and have maybe as much talent in that squad that we would expect for a newly promoted side, especially young talent. I just think as the season goes on, I think maybe as a cohesive unit, things aren't quite going to gel maybe as well as the other teams around there. And I think a team like Wolves, who yes, have lost some players, but they have some really good experience there, and they have a system that they've played with for a few years, whereas I think Sunderland, maybe that jump up just might be a little bit too much. I certainly think Leeds and Sunderland, I know I have them both in 18th and 19th, I think it is going to be close between them, Wolves, and the team that I have in 16th, because I do have Wolves in 17th, just surviving. I think between those bottom five, maybe minus Burnley, I think it's going to be really, really close, and I think it could be any two of those teams that go down. So I completely understand why you've got Wolves in there as well, because yeah, the start to the season they've had has been really poor, hasn't it?
Yeah, they've lost their first 3 games of the season, rock bottom of the table, and I think you can lose to Manchester City. Everyone does it most seasons, so I don't think that's an issue whatsoever. But the ones for me were Bournemouth, especially when they got a man sent off, and then also Everton when they did end up scoring 2 goals in that game. But then Everton, who at the moment are looking really exciting with this new look David Moyes side, they lost that at home 3-2, and I just do think that losing the likes of Cunha and Aid Nouri, I don't think they've replaced the goals and assists that they would have brought to this team in the season. So I do think that in the likes of John Arias, he's good, but I don't think his finishing is great. I think it's a little bit erratic and it's going to be a bit hit and miss. I think Hwang is going to have an absolutely phenomenal season, like he did a couple of years ago, to really help Strand Larsen, who got, I think, 14 goals and 4 assists. So he needs some help as well. Munetzi's okay. I think the wing backs are solid, but nothing amazing. I do like their Jose Sarr in goal and the back three. They looked really set if they don't get any injuries. But the rest of and obviously the 2 midfielders who I think are on a different level. But I just don't. The front three, the wing backs, it's just not doing it for me, Wolves. And I just don't see how they're going to score enough goals to stay in the Premier League, if I'm being completely honest. And I think it's one where they made a net loss of 2.5 million euros over the course of the whole transfer window. And so when you continuously don't invest into your squad, and I don't think they've particularly invested it into the quality that they necessarily need, I do think that this time it's going to be a season too much for Wolves, even though I do really like Vitor Pereira. But I don't like the squad that the Wolverhampton recruitment team have assembled, if I'm being honest. And I do really like the Sunderland one, even though I understand your concerns about the fact that maybe it's not going to gel and then maybe it's too many bodies, but I think they needed to do it, and they've done it quite well in my opinion.
Yeah, Wolves is a really difficult one, because it feels like the loss of Cunha is maybe the biggest loss I think we've seen in the Premier League this season. I think you can see that in those first 3 games. There's nobody that those Wolves players are really looking to create things. He is that sort of player who just created moments out of nothing. And I really don't think Wolves have that at the moment. I think they still have a good unit, and I think they'll be okay. I just think in games where maybe they're struggling and things are a bit stale, where Cunha is going to be hitting a 30-yard goal, he's going to be running from the halfway line and scoring. Those games where it can get you up from a draw up to a win and get those extra 2 points, I think is going to be a few too many of those this season where maybe they don't have that. So Wolves 17th, Sunderland 18th. I'm happy to put Wolves in 18th because I do think it's going to be really close, and it'll be nice to have a prediction at least where one of the newly promoted sides do stay up. And I think if Sunderland can get a good run going and have a really positive energy like they have at the moment, I think they could go on a fantastic run that would maybe be enough to keep them up. The only thing, like I said, is I worry if things start to go wrong, are they able to maybe flip that? But yeah, it's a bit more fun to have Sunderland 17th, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And also because of the fact that I think that, I mean, obviously, if Strand Larsen didn't make the move to Newcastle, which was heavily rumoured and reported, then I think it's fair enough to say Wolverhampton Wanderers are going down, because I don't think they would have had time to replace him. So it's a good thing they kept him. But also, who's going to be providing him the assists for those 14 goals he scored last season? And really, because he's got to pick up the slack as well, there's more pressure on him. So is he even going to get to that? We're going to have to wait and see. But yeah, I think it is nice to maybe just more hope than anything else. Just hope a newly promoted side stays up, because you don't want the Premier League to be a closed shop. You want something different, and it's meant to be a fair sport, competitive. So yeah, let's have Sunderland going down. Sunderland staying up in 17th, and then Wolverhampton Wanderers going down in 18th. Nice. So then, when it comes to 16th place, who have you got there? Because in my opinion, I had in my 16th and 15th, I had teams who I think are relegation contenders, and if it all goes massively wrong in terms of injuries or former manager or sackings, they could still go down, but not quite. So who did you have in 16th? And do you think for you they're relegation contenders as well?
Yeah, I would say this team is probably a relegation contender, and it's a shame that I think that, because I really like this club and I like a lot of their players, and it's Brentford I've got in 16th at the moment. I just think the losses of Thomas Frank, Brian Mbeumo, and Johan Wissa is a lot for a team to have, especially how reliant they were on those goals last season. And I think their front four of Sharda, Damsgaard, Utara, and Igor Thiago, it's looking like, I think is really good. But I still just think the change and just losing Mbeumo and Wissa is going to be a lot, as well as Christian Norgard in midfield, who is such an important player for Brentford. I just think that they have got a little bit worse, and I think probably the teams who maybe are in and around there haven't, I would say. So I do see, unfortunately, Brentford having a little bit of a drop. And I think one injury maybe to one of those four players going forward, I think somebody, especially like Damsgaard or Sharda, could really derail Brentford's season. So hopefully we don't see that, because Brentford still look like such a good side, especially given those losses. But yeah, in terms of quality, I've got them down in 16th.
Do you know what? I absolutely agree with everything you said there. I think, like you said, those four players, if any of them picks up an injury, they could be in real trouble. But the thing is, what I like about Brentford is the fact that I'm looking at that side, I'm thinking, who's going to score you at least 10 goals and get you around 40 goals in the season, and with a solid defence will keep you up. And I'm thinking Thiago could do that. He's already on penalties as well and got 2 goals in the first 3 games. It could be Ouattara with a more starts this season, maybe more of a crucial role than he was for Bournemouth last season. He got 7 goals, maybe can he get 10 again? Kevin Schade did get 10 goals. In fact, he got 11 goals last season for Brentford. And then Damsgaard knitting it all together. I also think Keane Lewis-Potter not playing fullback now, playing a little bit further forward. Can he also get a few more goals? And I think generally it'll be a collective, and it'll be tough along with the new manager as well. But I do see them staying up, but it's one where, like you said, if it get a few injuries, it could really, really go tits up for Keith Andrews. And so, yeah, I think they can't really be too much higher, but I think in 16th, I think that's pretty fair to say. So in 15th then, are we talking about teams who are going to be further away from the relegation and not going to be really in with a chance of getting relegated this season?
For me, yeah, the teams I've got sort of 15th to 12th. I would be very surprised if they get pulled down into a relegation race, I would say. Do you agree, or is there another team you're maybe a little bit nervy about?
There's just one team, not anymore, and that's West Ham United, because I think prior to the game 2 weeks ago now against Nottingham Forest, if they had lost that game as well, I would have been a bit more worried. But I do like the fact that Graham Potter changed his formation. He changed his tactics as well in that game. They got the 3-0 win. We'll come on to the Forest and what's going on with them at the moment with some breaking news that's come out earlier this week. But I do think that I can see them with likes of Paqueta, with Bowen, with Fulkrug. I can just see a bit more change, a bit more legs. But if it were to go very wrong, I can also see them being dragged into it. But they're the last team, if anyone. Do you have West Ham? Well, I have them. West Ham in 15th. Do you have them 15th, or do you not have them? Do you have them a bit higher up?
I actually have them in 14th, which I'm
Okay.
yeah, which I think when I first started doing my list, I thought, okay, given their recent results and maybe how they're performing, they probably should be a bit lower. But I just think when you actually look at their side and the quality that they have in there, I mean, like you said, Bowen, Paqueta, looking at Wan-Bissaka and Diouf as fullbacks, I think it'll be really important for them. I still think they have enough quality, and I do still think that Potter is a sensible enough manager to not let things go too wrong when they do. And like you said, when you change system and they got that win against Forest, I think that came at such a good time to come before the international break as well. The team I've got in 15th, I might as well tell you now. Just I have got Fulham. I don't think they're going to be anywhere near relegation trouble for me. Between 15th and 16th, there's going to be quite a big gap. I just think Fulham, maybe they've been in and around that sort of 10th, 11th, pushing up, maybe overperforming a little bit in terms of expectations against their squad. And I just think this season there are a few teams who are now better than them. They didn't really invest in the summer, didn't really improve their squad at all. I'm still not convinced, particularly maybe about their striker situation. Is it going to be Jimenez? Is it Muniz? I'm just not sure about Fulham, and I think West Ham will be less consistent. But I think when West Ham play well, they play better than Fulham.
Oh, I was with you up until that last sentence, I'll be honest, because I've had this for a couple of teams, and I think to myself, just because you haven't necessarily invested heavily in the squad, had lots of changes, does that mean just because you're standing still, you're getting worse? And for some teams, I don't think that's necessarily the case. With Fulham, I do agree it feels a little bit stale, maybe because of the fact that they've got an average age, I think they've got the oldest average age in terms of squad in the whole Premier League. And that means that the players aren't necessarily improving because you've got a younger squad, they improve and get better, but the older players are maybe getting worse. And so I have got them lower down than where they finished last season, but I don't have them in 15th. I'll be honest. I've got them just a couple of places higher up, so not much lower down.
Okay.
Have you got West Ham? You said you got West Ham in 14th.
Yeah, West Ham 14th, Fulham 15th.
I'll tell you what we could do. We could put West Ham United in 15th, Fulham 14th, if that works for you.
I'm happy with that. Yeah, I'm intrigued to hear. So is it your...
13th.
Did you have Fulham in 13th then? And in 14th you had...
Yeah, so I had Fulham in so I had West Ham 15th, which is where we're going to put them. I had Fulham in 13th, but we're going to put them together in 14th. And then I had Crystal Palace originally in 14th, who we'll have a discussion about maybe now. Who did you have in 13th?
I had Crystal Palace in 13th. So
okay. I think we can agree with that. So Crystal Palace 13th, a little bit of a drop-off. And it's roughly whereabouts they finish every season anyway. I mean, I look at the last 5 finishes. They finished 12th last season, then 10th, 11th, 12th, and 14th. And so we probably got them in that similar range as well. What impact do you think Europe is going to have? Because that was a big one for me of why I think that they probably might drop off a little bit. I'm not sure about the depth, especially in the back three. I think it was good to keep Margay, but obviously losing Eze was a massive blow for them, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. I think the impact of Europe is completely dependent on the depth of those squads, and I think that's why when we see teams who are traditionally finishing in mid-table, not one of the larger clubs where they just have quality in that second 11 is almost as good as a few Premier League teams starting 11. Whereas when you work your way down, and the case with Palace, I think their strongest 11 is really, really good. They play really well, such a good system, and they have players that suit that system so fantastically. But like you said, you can't play all of these players in every single game in the Conference League and in the Premier League. And I think they will be focusing on that Conference League. I think they'd be crazy not to, because what an achievement that would be from Palace after what was an incredible season last season. Could it get even better this season? And I think Glasner will do that, and ultimately that will just result in a bit of a drop in their league performance. Not a massive one, but enough to be noticeable, especially when they've got players looking like Mateta, Sarr, Munoz, Gahey, Lacroix, Richards, those sort of key players for Palace. that maybe if they are playing a few too many games, if they are being rested, the players who are coming in from the bench, I don't think are anywhere near as important as those, or as good as those players are.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, mate. And especially, I looked at the Conference League and the teams that are in it, and I thought to myself, right, Crystal Palace have to be one of the favourites to win it. And I think they are, because I was looking at the other teams that they could be challenging for it, and I thought to myself, Strasbourg look like they could be one of the teams to watch out for in that competition, but also AZ Alkmaar. I look at the Ukrainian teams, Dynamo Kiev, Shakhtar Donetsk. You got FC Mainz in there as well, who had a fantastic Bundesliga campaign last year. And obviously the one who seemed to be prioritising the Conference League but never seemed to win it, Fiorentina as well. So really, when you think about it and consider the calibre of managers that Oliver Glasner is, won the Europa League obviously with Eintracht Frankfurt, you would think yourself, yeah, they've got a great chance of winning that and making it, 3 trophies in 2 years, which, is the stuff of dreams for Crystal Palace fans. So yeah, I think 13th place, yeah, absolutely amazing. I think you were spot on with everything about the key players. Eddie Nketiah has already picked up an injury. He's not back until after the October international. That means Mateta's going to have to play every game. Not sure about... I think they've got a young 19-year-old as backup for Daniel Munoz, but Munoz is arguably one of the best players in his position in the league. I mean, right back or right wing back. So, yeah, I think 13th is very fair for Crystal Palace. In 12th then, I have got another side who have Europe, and I've gone for Nottingham Forest. A little bit of drop off from where they were last season. Who have you got in 12th, and do you think we can make some sort of agreement here?
Yeah, it's an easy agreement, mate, because I've got exactly the same.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting we've done that as well. I think that's probably the one that is probably the biggest surprise, I suppose, in terms of what we'd expect from Forest. But like you said, the two key factors, I think, for me, which I imagine were the same for you, European football and Big Ange is back. That is the two differences, I think.
Yeah, it's weird because I guess we haven't spoken about it, have we? I mean, Nuno Espirito Santo has been sacked, which, based on some of the interviews that he did prior to the season starting and then throughout, it kind of feels like it had to be done, because I don't think you can come out and talk bad about the ownership in the way that Nuno did and then also have your job as well. I think he would just... Yeah, I think based on his comments, he had to go, but what happened behind the scenes, I guess there was a bit of a falling out. Who knows, really? But then with Big Ange coming in, I mean, I think he'll come in and he'll get the fans on side. I don't think that's an issue, because I think after funny enough, Mourinho, Nuno, and Conte, when he took over at Spurs fans were very downbeat about the team and the prospects. I think Ange will come in, will elevate everyone there. But in terms of tactically, it is a bit of a far cry from the Spurs side, the very high line, the sweeper keeper, the high intensity pressing. But I think will he have learned from his time from Spurs? Will he change his ideas about his philosophy, about his style of play, his tactics? And will he adjust more to the players? I don't really know. And if anything, I'm not sure if I should read anything into the first 3 games of the season now that they've changed the manager or not. How do you feel about Ange and everything going on at Nottingham Forest at the moment?
Yeah, it's almost like the opposite appointment of how they play and the manager they've brought in. They're a team who play quickly out from the back and are very solid defensively and like to transition and break really quickly. Whereas, yeah, like you said, under Spurs, they're a high possession, high press team who love to win that ball as high as they can and create chances from there. So it's almost just a complete opposite appointment as you could get. Like you said, I do worry, because I think if he comes in and he tries to be defensive, it doesn't really suit his style and what his whole philosophy is about. Whereas if he comes in and changes it, then you've got players where that doesn't suit them, and their strength isn't probably in that back line with Murillo and Milenkovic, who are fantastic players. So I think ultimately, whichever way he goes, there is going to be a drop for Forest. I do think, though, that he is the sort of manager who would be able to do well in the Europa League with that squad, as we've seen with Spurs in the Europa League, and under Celtic in knockout competitions as well previously. I think he is the right sort of manager for that competition, but I do think it is ultimately going to lead to a drop in performance in the league, especially compared to last year.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I just have no clue. I have honestly no clue, because when you think about it, he hasn't actually been out of management for that long, because he made it all the way to the end of the season. and then now it's only 3 games into the start of the new season. I wonder, because of the intensity and the toll of last season and the constant pressure and talk around his job, how much of a... I think he's probably just had a break, if we're being honest. I don't think... How much reflection, how much learning has he done from Spurs to now? Who really knows? I don't think it would have been too much, but I think also he could maybe make the argument no matter what kind of way he's playing, because I think his first game is against Arsenal. That's perfect opposition. Just play the way Nuno would have set up his team, play in a low block, try and hit Arsenal on the counter-attack, and then you can say, well, it's Arsenal, it's one of the best teams in the league, of course we're going to be doing that. But then also, if he tries to change how they play and play a little bit more progressively, he doesn't have to go 0 to 100 straight away. He can maybe start off with the mid-block and then go, well, let's see how these players are going to do. And he could try that in the league. But also in terms of the Europa League, there were times where, they did play really defensively. I think the Frankfurt game for Spurs in the knockout stages of the Europa League last season come into mind in particular, where they were pretty much just sitting back and trying to hit Frankfurt on the counter-attack. And also you got the final as well against Man United. They got the goal, and from there they just sat back the entirety of the second half. So he has shown he can be flexible. We'll just have to wait and see how it's going to go with him, Marinakis, how the players are going to go. I also think the Forest Europa League squad is a bit mental as well. They've left out players like Amari Hutchinson, who's their record signing, and he's out of the Europa League squad. Zinchenko's not in it. Also like Jota Silva, Taiwo Awoniyi, maybe they're not fancied, but it seemed like a squad that maybe Nuno assembled for the Europa League, and then now Andy's going to take over, and it's all a bit all over the place. 12th is probably playing it safe because it's not outrageously bad and it's not outrageously good either, because, who the hell knows. Let's move on then to 11th, and who have you got there?
Yeah, one name that's probably people are waiting to hear because we're creeping up this list and they still haven't been mentioned yet, given their finishes in recent seasons, but that is Everton. I've gone for them in 11th. Really impressed with their start of the season. I think they've come out really positively. Last few seasons maybe relying on their defence a little bit, whereas now this season it feels like they've got more of a complete team. Not just their attack, but just the whole way that they're shaping up at the moment. I think David Moyes is a fantastic manager still. He will get the best out of those players, especially looking at players like Dewsbury Hall and Grealish, which is a fantastic loan signing for them. Already 4 assists in the league in just 2 games. I think they're going to have a really, really solid season, and one that's going to be a vast improvement from seasons before, and potentially even one for them to build on going forward for the long term, because as I said, already got that defence. That attack seems to have come in now. Yeah, one of the better mid-table sides, I reckon, this season.
Yeah, I'm really optimistic on Everton, and if anything, I've actually got them one place higher in 10th because I think they're absolutely fantastic. And I mean, you mentioned the front three behind Beto or Barry, depending on who starts. You didn't even mention Tyler Dibbling, who is on the bench now, and he's probably going to use the season to try and learn what David Moyes wants. He's still a very young player. And so when maybe if Grealish isn't made permanent next season, then he can come into that side element and Dijk can move over to the left. And it's just starting to feel like the Everton of old. And sometimes they say, you should never go back to a former manager. But I think in this case, it may not be the heights of hitting the Champions League that they did under the first time Moyes was there, but it's certainly much better than what they were used to before under Dyche, Benitez, Lampard. I think this is definitely an Everton on the rise, on the up, and transfers were good. The first 3 games of the season were really, really good. And I think they're probably going to surprise a few teams this season and pick up results you probably don't expect them to do against some of the big boys as well, because, like you said, they can defend really well and then they can also hit you on the counter-attack. And I think Beto is actually quite underrated and he's actually a much better holder man than I think people get him credit for. So I've got Everton actually one place higher in 10th, but I'm actually okay putting them 11th because they've started the season well, but there's always a chance that, because they started the season well, they will drop off and they'll have these spells. But because the team I had in 11th was actually a team I could put in a few different places, and that was actually Bournemouth. Do you have Bournemouth significantly higher, or did you have them in 10th?
No, got them just the other way around for you. Got them in 10th, so yeah, similar.
Yeah. Do you know what? Let's put Everton in 11th.
Okay.
Because it is still a massive jump if they end up finishing in the top 10. I mean, yeah. And let's put Bournemouth in 10th. Anyone want to take us away with Bournemouth, and why do you think they're going to do? Where did they finish last season? I can't even remember.
I think they might have finished 10th last season.
Okay. Well, why do you have Bournemouth
11th,
finishing
maybe?
exactly where they did last season?
Yeah, I think they it felt like maybe they finished higher last season. I'm pretty sure they got their points record last season in the Premier League, Bournemouth. I just think it shows that they're still a fantastic side the way that they've started this season. And I think maybe if we would have done predictions, potentially even at the sort of midway through the transfer window, the losses that they've had, especially to that back line of Kirkesh, Huyson, Kepa, and Zabani, 4 out of the 5 of their consistent backline last season are gone. They still have a fantastic team, and they still play really, really good. And the start they've had to the season has been great, especially compared to expectations.
Absolutely. And I think more teams really need to study that Bournemouth's recruitment strategy and how the fact that they can recruit players and then they can go straight into that first team and just look absolutely amazing and look like they've been playing in that team for years. I mean, I think especially who was it? It was Diakate in the opening game of the season against Liverpool. They signed him like a couple of days before and he looked like one of the best centre backs on the pitch. I honestly, and the fact that, they picked up 6 points already, and when you looked at the games on paper, you probably thought, okay, they might lose Liverpool one, they probably lose to the Spurs game as well, but then they're beating Spurs, beating Wolves, and they just look like a really good side. Andoni Iraola is a really good manager, and I really like the signing of Jimenez as well on loan from AC Milan. I can't remember though if that one's going to be a loan to buy or just a straight loan. The whole loan situation really confusing me with players nowadays. But I think he looks like he could be a really good long-term prospect in that right back position if it is an obligation or an option to buy as well. So, yeah, I think Bournemouth are great. Oh, we didn't even mention Semenyo, who I think personally is going to have a season where people are going to go, right, he's the next one out the door. Because he could have easily left this summer, but I think this time next year, he's going to be playing for one of the big boys because I think he's absolutely fantastic. Left foot, right foot, physicality, heading, dribbling, pace, power. He's got absolutely everything. So yeah, Bournemouth in 10 seems like a reasonable shout.
Yeah, so they creep into the top half. I maybe even had Bournemouth highlighted as potential. I'm not going to get carried away. Potential European contender, depending how the places go and everything goes. They could creep in if they get a really nice run of form. I mean, with their attacking quality, like you said, Kluivert, Semenyo, Evanilson, they could creep in. And I think part of that as well is maybe especially the teams in my table that I've got ahead of them, who do have very good quality, who can, on their day, I think can beat any team in this league. But I do worry about the consistency of these next sort of 2 or 3, or actually even these next 4 teams, I would say, could be finishing anywhere within these positions. Should we start with who you've got in 9th? Because I think for me, this is the most interesting bit of the table.
Yeah, we can do my team in 9th, and it is actually between these 3. So it is Everton, Bournemouth, who I wasn't sure where they're going to go, and along with this 9th place side, who I went for Brighton and Hove Albion, who prior to the season starting, I think I had them maybe in like 7th and being like they could really go on to do something. But the reason why I didn't put them ahead of some of the other teams was because I think Hurst is a very good manager, but I still think he's still very young, still very inexperienced. And some of the quality of these managers, some of the things that they've won, I think some of the inconsistency comes from him, but then also some of the other players themselves in the Brighton squad, because I am disappointed. Is that disrespectful? No, I don't think it is. I am so slightly disappointed at the fact that Danny Welbeck is leading the line for Brighton. I think he's a fantastic professional. I think he's a really, really good player. But the fact that they spend so much money in Kosciulas and Simas, the 2 Greek strikers, and neither of them have started a game in the Premier League yet, is a little bit worrying. They also had the game in the first round of the Carabao Cup where they started a 17-year-old. I think his name was Howell, if I remember rightly, and he looked incredible in that game. I was like, wow, why on earth did they sign the other 2 lads if they got this guy? But the fact that it's still Welbeck, in the game that he didn't play, it was Rutter up front. And like you said, I just think there are some incredible inconsistencies. And I think I mentioned this before, but I think it comes from the fact that I don't think there's the pressure on Brighton or the expectation that they have to particularly go on and kick on and do stuff, because I think it comes from top down and the model is, buy to sell. they do that. And I don't necessarily think that they keep a hold of many of the players in the peak. And so for me, I think they are going to be inconsistent and they could finish ninth. So yeah, it's weird because they could be higher, they could be lower. I just don't know. So I've got them in somewhere near the middle.
Yeah, and it is just mental. You're like downplaying and saying the negatives because you think they're going to finish ninth. Like Brighton,
Yeah,
finishing ninth is maybe a
yeah,
bad thing. Is amazing. I'm similar to you. I really like Brighton. I like a lot of their players. I do just worry about their consistency, and there are still going to be games this season, I think, where they create the chances, they dominate, even they defend well. I think their defense this season has improved a lot, and I think it will continue to improve. I think Van Hecke is slowly becoming one of the best centre backs in the league. But I still think they have enough quality, and I think their squad depth is superb, and I think that's going to be a really big thing for them, and it was a really big thing that we saw in that Manchester City game, the way that they were just, when they weren't playing well and they weren't starting well, and normally Brighton we see sort of dominate possession and play well for the whole game, whereas in this time they saw things weren't working, completely flipped it around, and the second half was a whole new game, and I think that's going to be a really big thing for Brighton, especially compared to the teams around them. I think this season where their depth isn't as strong. I've actually gone for Brighton in 8th, so one position ahead of you in ninth. And maybe because I've gone for a bit of a controversial and a bit of a harsh one in ninth.
Okay. Well, I'm going to have to hear who you have in ninth then before we can make a decision.
Yeah, I've gone for Aston Villa, which does feel harsh. I think they've had a really slow start to the season. Watkins hasn't looked particularly strong. I think Rodgers has not picked up that form that we saw last season just yet. Their goalkeeper situation, I think, with Emi Martinez, question marks over him. He's not playing. I just think there has been a bit of a clear drop already so far of Aston Villa, and maybe starting the season like that, I don't think there really feels like there's as much of that fear with Aston Villa that they can go and win any game. It really felt like that over the last few seasons, that there isn't a game that they couldn't go and win. And I don't know what's changed particularly. I just think maybe things have got a little bit stale, and maybe their style of play of playing out from the back and those long balls that Watkins runs onto, I think teams are slowly playing better against them and knowing how Aston Villa play a little bit more. I still think they have a good season. I think ninth is still a good season for Villa. I just think it is unfortunately going to be a bit of a drop compared to last year.
Is ninth a good season for Aston Villa? Because they were effectively one game away, a positive result against Man United in the last game of the season. And maybe they get that penalty, which in my opinion was a penalty, and then all of a sudden they are in the top 5. They have Champions League football, and it's a completely different tale. I think ninth would be a bad season, but it would depend on what they do in the cup competitions. Because in terms of the general squad, I do agree with you, and this is similar to what my thinking was with Fulham, which was just because you got a similar squad, just because you're staying still, does that mean you're going backwards? And I don't necessarily think that's the case, but I think with Villa, because of the players that they did have, especially on loan, versus the players that they now have, I think potentially it is a drop-off. But I don't have them in ninth because the other question is with this, how much stock do you put into the first 3 games of the season? Because based on this, Aston Villa are getting relegated, and they're absolutely not getting relegated. I'll be incredibly surprised if they didn't finish inside the top 10, because I really rate Unai Emery. I think they still have incredible players. Some, Ollie Watkins, Emi Martinez, 2 players who maybe had the head turned, now the transfer window's closed, maybe might fix them, and maybe they'll get back to where they were. I have got Aston Villa in 7th, so a couple of places higher, just because I think that we know that they are a known quantity. We know on their day they can turn it up. They could be a Champions League side, and there are some question marks about some other sides. So you need to decide what to do with Brighton. So I've got them in 9th. You've got them in 8th.
I'm happy to go Brighton in 9th. Yeah, I think we're leaning towards that, aren't we?
Brighton in 9th, yeah, because I had Aston Villa in 7th and I had Man United in 8th.
Okay, yeah. Do you wanna talk to us about Man United?
I can, but it depends. Do you have them much higher up?
No, I have them in 7th, so
Okay,
we're not
so it's
worlds
between Man
apart. Yeah.
United and Villa. Okay. So I think going into the season, I had Man United in 6th, but just based on what I've seen so far, I'm just not convinced. Because the game that they played best in was Arsenal in the first game of the season, but they did lose that game. They then played well in the first half against Fulham. However, they didn't capitalize on it. And, are they Bruno Fernandes scoring that penalty away from a completely different result in that game? Maybe. But the way they played in the second half, Fulham thoroughly deserved the draw. And then the last one against Burnley, where I just thought to myself, is this the same United that we've seen in previous years? Pick a season. I thought to myself, maybe, because it took Burnley scoring for them to finally get their act together and think to themselves, okay, we need to, we need to kick on, we need to score the goals, we need to win this game. And I thought to myself, why don't you just do that before Burnley score? Because if they do that, then they could have been 3-0 up and they could have been fine. But the fact that they continuously let Burnley back into the game, a side who we think are going to finish 20th, and the fact that Burnley went to Old Trafford with no fear, I worry. And also the fact that under Ruben Amorim, they haven't won 2 consecutive games in a row. I mean, the guy who refuses to cut his hair until United win 5 games in a row, that's not happening anytime soon. I mean, God, and I'm just not convinced, if I'm being completely honest. Whereas I have seen Aston Villa be really, really good. And I just feel I can trust them. And I can trust Unai Emery. And I can trust Ollie Watkins. I can trust Morgan Rogers, who haven't been great, but will find their feet. Yeah. I'm just... I really don't know. It feels like I need to decide where to put Man United, and then we can sort the rest of this list out.
Yeah, no, I think that's completely fair about Man United. I think maybe that's a little bit harsh on the Burnley game. I think they completely dominated that game and they just didn't score. I think their just finishing in that game was pretty poor. But I think they still did dominate. And they dominated against Arsenal as well. I think they played pretty similar in both games. They kept the ball really well. They progressed it from the back really well. And did some things that maybe they have struggled with in recent years that they have stepped up. And I just think the quality that United have, looking at Cunha, looking at Mbeumo, looking at Bruno Fernandes, I think even players like Dorgu and Diallo and Dallo as well, I think are going to be really important for them this season. And I do think it feels like you said, Burnley going to Old Trafford without any fear. I do think that fear of some of those Man United players is coming back. And I think once they start playing together and start playing well, I think they're going to be decent. And United or Villa, like you say, it's Villa are maybe a bit more of a safe option and are probably if you simulated this season maybe 10, 20 times, Villa would probably be more consistent, whereas United, there could be a few 15ths, there could be a few 4th places, something like that. I just think this is, we've probably been saying it for the last 4 or 5 years, that this is maybe the season where United have a bit of a step up and hopefully a step forward, because I think the foundation is maybe there now. I don't know. I would push in this list to have United 7th, but
I'm okay with that because I honestly think that you and I, and people our age have been scarred because United ruined all of our childhoods, and now we think that every summer, oh God, they're back, aren't they? And then when they're not, we're all celebrating. But yeah, I mean, we didn't even touch on the new goalkeeper they have, Lemens, the 23-year-old. I mean, how good is he going to be in goal? There's so much going on at Man United, and I mean, yeah, sure. Let's, I don't know which way around. So Aston Villa in 8th and Man United in 7th.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah. Because I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, if I look in the next 4 games between now and the international break, if they didn't lose both the games against Man City and Chelsea, but then they struggled against Sunderland and Brentford, and that to me is the Man United we've seen over the last few years. Because I often think to myself, just win home and away against the bottom 10 teams and you got 60 points and they just can't do that. I mean, what did they get last year? Early 40s? Just? Yeah. I'm not convinced. I need more convincing. But it feels harsh on Aston Villa. But I'm not sure about signing Lindelof on a free, Sancho on loan. I mean, I like Harvey Elliott, but he's just coming in to replace Jacob Ramsey. So a better transfer window, and I think there'll be a lot more positivity from neutrals and fans as well. So entering the top six now, and I think I can guess who you have in six. Do you have Newcastle United?
I don't actually. I have Tottenham Hotspur in sixth place.
Okay.
I will just say I would do have Newcastle in fifth though. It's pretty close between these two teams for me. I mean, you've got Newcastle who have been fantastic over the last few years, but have lost Alexander Isak. How good are those replacements in Voltemada and Wissa? I think yet to see, but I think both of them will do a really good job for Newcastle, and they needed to sign one of them, whether Isak was going anyway. So I think to get both is great. They've got Alanga, who is hopefully going to be sort of their starting right winger and a little bit more firepower for them. And then when you see that midfield of Newcastle, it's just so good. It is so good. Such good balance. Three of the best midfielders in the league, all together playing so well, is massive for them. And then on the other hand, you've got Spurs, who are Spurs. You've got Thomas Frank, maybe the only sort of sensible part of Spurs that makes sense at the moment with the squad that they have. And Kudus has come in playing really well. Their midfield, a lot of injuries. We're not sure who's playing. They seem to be playing a lot of defensive midfielders at the moment. A really good back line on paper who can defend well, but maybe even attack better than they defend. And Daniel Levy now stepping down. A complete wild card of a team who I think actually will do really well this year and will find a bit more balance than maybe they have in the last few years. So yeah, between these two teams, it's super close. I just think maybe Spurs' inconsistency will drop them a little bit, but I think it's going to be a season where, like I said with Man United, the foundations are maybe there a little bit more, and that they're going to have a really good season as well, and maybe just miss out on Champions League football.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I mean, we'll have to wait and see if fifth place is in the Champions League again this season or not. But yeah, I had it the other way around. So I had Newcastle in sixth and Tottenham in fifth. I'm trying to figure out, I mean, in terms of differences, I think that Spurs maybe have a little bit more up front. I especially think the signing of Xavi Simons, who, I mean, we yet to see him kick a ball in the Premier League, and I can't remember, I think maybe it was on the overlap, maybe Jamie Carragher going, like, we've all known his name for so long because he's been at like Barcelona, he's been in the Netherlands, he's been at RB Leipzig, PSG, but how much have we seen of him? Well, what I have seen of him, and I have seen whole games, mainly in the Champions League, I think he's amazing. And, I mean, how him, Kulusevski, Kudus, I mean, if Madison was fit as well, how they're all going to fit in, I don't know, but I really like the looks of how Spurs are going to play. I mean, the fact that Richarlison's playing up front at the moment and doing really well. I did maybe read something that Solanke might be out for a little while with an injury, and I think if that's true, then that is going to be a bit of a blow. But I just think that they have the different options to be able to play in different ways and exploit teams, and I think Thomas Frank is an incredibly intelligent manager who will get the best out of those players. Whereas I do think that maybe Newcastle, while they have a really good squad, really good first team, do they have the ability? This is hard. This sounds so harsh because it is literally nitpicking between like two really good teams. But like, do they have different ways of playing, and do they have those different profiles in the team? Because are Gordon and Barnes and Alanga all very similar behind their midfield three? I mean, yes, obviously they signed Jacob Ramsey, so got Joe Willock and Lewis Miley, but it is a substantial drop off to the first three, and because that's the first three are so good. And I do think there are just different options, a few more different options with Spurs, and that's why I just had them a little bit higher. But I mean, going into the season before I saw a ball kicked, I had them like maybe 7th or 8th, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure really. And with Newcastle, I'll ask you this question: is Isak and Wilson, were they a better combination than Wissa and Voltemada, or is Wissa and Voltemada better than Isak and Wilson? I'm not sure.
Well, I think we can easily say that Wissa is going to be a better backup striker than Wilson was, because 19 goals did he get last season in the league, Wissa?
Something like that.
Yeah, Voldemort is a funny one. I think he's going to come in and do really well. I think if Newcastle paid that much money, you had Bayern Munich potentially willing to pay that much money for him, given his age and his profile. I don't think he's not too dissimilar to Isak in terms of a player. Very tall, very good dribbler for his height. Likes to drop off and pick up the ball and sort of work in those half spaces, especially on the left hand side. I hope he's going to do well because I think he's going to be a really fun player to watch, and I need to try and watch some Newcastle games this season to see him play because I think he will be their starting striker. Could be great, but when you lose a player like Isak, whoever is coming in has massive shoes to fill. So yeah, there could be a drop off. Is it going to be as much of a drop off as maybe people are thinking? I'm not too sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to see Voldemort as well. He wasn't necessarily prolific, whereas Isak was, but then he's also a slightly different player. But then you go Wissa, like you said, who's more fit, more available. So as a combination, and now that you've got that bad egg out of the dressing room, then yeah, who knows? Maybe that's one we'll discuss it maybe later on in the season. But in terms of 6th and 5th, to be honest, flip a coin. I really don't know. Do you feel particularly strongly about Newcastle finishing above Spurs?
No, honestly, not massively. Xavi
I tell you what,
could be the deal breaker.
Since you love Thomas Frank so much, Tobes, let's put Spurs in 5th and put Newcastle in 6th.
Go on then, yeah. Just for Thomas the Frank engine. There we go.
Jesus. All right, so we are into our top 4 now, and obviously that is Chelsea, Manchester City, Arsenal, and Liverpool. But what order have we got them in? I will say, going into the season, I had Chelsea in 4th, and I am actually going to keep them in 4th. However, I am very close to putting Manchester City in 4th based on what I've seen so far this season. What was your thinking about this top 4, and especially 4th and 3rd in particular?
Yeah, Chelsea was pretty set as a 4th for me. Manchester City, I think I still had a step above them. I know they haven't started the season well, and I know they've got a lot of injuries actually at the moment, which I think is going to be an issue, especially how City start the season. They don't get going till later in the season. Could this sort of hamper results even further? I just don't think, more so I don't think Chelsea are that good to really be pushing up towards Manchester City just yet. They've got a really good squad and they've got some fantastic players. Esteval, I had no idea he was going to be as good as he is. He looks crazy. Very, very jealous of that signing. But I just think maybe the quality of that squad isn't quite there just yet. I think the names and the players, I think given a few years, they will be pushing for the title with the side that they have. I just think they've still got a lot of young players and still lack that experience despite another sort of big transfer window. So I don't think Chelsea are there just yet. I think they will get top 4. I'd be pretty confident saying that. I just think, the 3 teams above them are still that step ahead for me. So, I would have Chelsea in 4th.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough, honestly. I think with Esteval, like you said, I am equally as surprised at how good he is. I will say, though, that he looks incredibly promising in everything apart from his finishing, because I think that when he starts doing that, then he's got everything else to be a world-class player, I'll just say it. But as soon as he gets finishing going and he starts scoring goals and getting assists, then almost all of a sudden, wow, what a player. I will say, though, that also the Liam Delap injury has almost pushed me to put Chelsea in 4th, because I think now with only João Pedro and Nicolas Jackson being on loan at Bayern Munich, and especially with Cole Palmer picking up a bit of a knock as well, missing the 3rd game they played against Fulham, and also then missing the England games as well, that if João Pedro has to play there, and then also, like, he's the best number 10 and number 9 at the moment of the players who are fit, and then Chelsea have to move something else around. Also the defence as well, and the goalkeeper, obviously, who I'll just be honest, I just don't rate. I'm really trying this season just to say what I think, and I just don't rate Robert Sanchez as a shot stopper. So yeah, maybe 4th is fair. But I do have really a lot of questions about Manchester City. Who do you have them 3rd as well, I'm right in saying?
I do have them 3rd, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a bit worried. And I mean, in terms of the attacking lineup, I know you mentioned Marmoush being injured, but I also go as to say I'm a bit worried that they may be over-aligned in terms of goal scoring for Erling Haaland, because I really like the profile of players that they have, especially in the wide areas. I mean, who they got, Doku, Savino, Bob. Then also you're gonna got players like Bernardo Silva, Cherky. But really, when I think about it, who of them is really that clinical apart from Mamouche? Because Savio was a one goal last season. Doku is great at everything apart from finishing, it seems like. I mean, Bernardo Silva, is he going to get too many goals? Cherky's out injured. Phil Foden struggling for fitness at the moment. And without Erling Haaland, if Haaland were to actually get injured, I think there's a massive drop off in the amount of goals that they could score. And actually, when I looked at it, Man City scored their second fewest amount of goals last season in the last 12 seasons. It was. So, yeah, it was a bad season for them, especially by their standards. But I'm not sure about, like, if Erling Haaland were to get injured, that is a massive, massive drop off. And I do worry about them. And I don't think they're necessarily clicking and firing on all cylinders. So, just wanted to get your thoughts on if you think that was fair or not.
Yeah, and I think it's fair, and it definitely makes sense in the fact that I think those supporting players are more creators, which is great for Haaland, and that's what you want most of the time is to have those players making chances for Haaland because he is going to score them. But like you said, in a game where maybe things aren't firing or things, those creative players are looking for somebody else to score. I agree. I don't think it's quite there. How much will that impact their season? I think it will be enough for Arsenal and Liverpool to be the clear top two by the end of the season. I think City, if they can get a run, they can be pushing up there as well because they still have the quality. And I mean, yes, maybe those players aren't the best goal scorers, but they are still absolutely fantastic players who can chip in when needed. And you look at the sort of midfield behind them with Rodri and Reinders and Nico Gonzalez. Still a fantastic side. Again, defensively, maybe another little negative on them that I don't think their fullbacks are maybe as good as they should be, given the quality of Manchester City's side and the signings they've made this season. I think they've got really good attacking fullbacks and players who can play that Manchester City style very well, but I don't think they fixed those issues that we see when they're counted against in the wide areas. We've discussed it a few times now, and it still seems to be the same issue for City that hasn't been fixed. Third I think is good and better than last season. I think for sure Manchester City will be, but maybe not better enough to get in a real title race come the last few games of the season.
Yeah, I think they, especially after the Rodri injury, they really dropped off a cliff. But then the second half last season, I think they picked up more points than anyone else in that period. So if they can just have that similar kind of form and just be consistent over the whole season, then I think they will be up there. I just wasn't sure if, maybe because of the opening few games of the season, that I was slightly more impressed with Chelsea and slightly more disappointed with City. That maybe I do think the gap is closer than I initially thought prior to the start of the season. But maybe you're right. Maybe, with Pep and it is Haaland, Rodri, and etc. The who have won 4 titles in a row, that I shouldn't really underestimate them, because considering what kind of players they have and the team that they are. So here we are, top 2, Liverpool, Arsenal, my team, your team. Who wants to go first? Go on, give me what you think is going to happen.
I think I know what you've gone for, and I won't say until you said, but I have gone for Arsenal in first. Despite the 1-0 loss to Liverpool at Anfield, I do still think Arsenal will win the league. I think they finally have a complete side. I think in terms of cover and depth, I think it's probably one of the best in the league now, and I think last season you could say it was one of the worst in the top 4. I think they've signed fantastically well to cover those positions. I think Zubimendi is going to be potentially the signing of the season. He has looked unbelievable. He is exactly what Arsenal have needed in that number 6. Defensively, he looks really, really good. He's quick on the turn. He allows Declan Rice to be facing the goal more, which I think is massive. And I think we'll see a lot more goal contributions from him this season. Finally got that striker in Gyökeres, and I just think the squad has come together, and it is finally going to be that season for Arsenal. And Eze as well, coming in as the left winger, I think is what they've needed to. And I think Arsenal have really improved that squad from last season and will do it. I think it's going to be super close though, and I think it's literally almost nothing to call between them, and maybe just a point or two, because Liverpool have also looked amazing, improved their squad massively, and yeah, basically everything I said about the Arsenal squad, I'm sure I can pass over to you, and you can say about Liverpool as well now.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, so prior to the season starting, I did say Arsenal. And I do think they have all the qualities to win the league. They are a title winning side who just haven't won a title. They are good enough to do it. And this, well, very much could be their season. And we'll have to wait and see. Before the season I went for Arsenal. I have to go for Liverpool now, because I was thinking to myself, and I'm a bit pessimistic on my own channel about my own team, just because of the fact that, you don't want to go out there looking like an idiot, especially when it's your own team as well. But then I thought to myself, if it was another team who had just won the league the season prior, and then signed Isak, Florian Wirtz, Hugo Ekitike, who started as well as he has, Jeremy Frimpong, Milos Kerkez, Mamadashvili, I'm sure I'm missing someone else as well. But if it was another team, I would have said, yeah, they've got to be favourites for the league. So I thought to myself, just because it's my own team, doesn't mean I can change my opinion based on that and downplay them just because, give Arsenal the pressure. So yeah, I have to go for Liverpool in first. And what I really like is the fact that we haven't played well in the first 3 games necessarily. I think the Arsenal performance showed that we can be defensively resolute when we need to be, and that the first few games was the squad leaning into the strengths at the moment. And it's okay if you're not playing well in the first few games of the season. It's about making sure you play well at the end of the season as well. So the fact that we've got so many new players, so many exciting players, like I said, signed Isak, signed Wirtz. Wirtz hasn't even hit the ground running, and I think he's still taking his time to get used to the Premier League. And the fact that, a player who you would expect to be out of the side, now Dominic Szoboszlai, filling in at right back, doing incredibly well, getting 2 man of the match performances at right back, and then, stepping up in the big cage and scoring a goal against us as well. The only thing I'd say is, would have obviously really liked Margay to get over the line, and then, that defensive reinforcement with Van Dijk, Kanate, Gay, Gomez, and Leone as well. And maybe Joe Gomez would have left in that situation. But if the backline can stay fit, and that's a big one, if Kanate can stay fit for the entirety of the season, then I think Liverpool...
Yeah, like you said, the Liverpool squad now is just mental. I mean, a front 4 of Isak, Wirtz, Salah, and either Ekitike or Gakpo is terrifying, is fantastic. I think maybe this is one where we're just going to go for our own choices, and it'll just be that final one that we won't agree on, because I will stick to my guns for Arsenal. I think you'll stick to your guns for Liverpool, and let's just hope for a great title race, I think is probably the only thing we can say. I don't think either of us is going to be able to be convinced.
No, and I think this is okay as well, because I don't think anyone watching or listening can go, you know what, I don't think it's going to be either Liverpool or Arsenal, and then go for someone else. I mean, you can if you want. That's a rogue shot. Everyone's entitled to their opinions, but I don't think you could have a go at us for saying that. And I mean, yeah, the Liverpool-Arsenal game came really early on in the season, really great to get those two sides going at it to see what they're going to be like. But ultimately, it's match day 3 of 38. There's still 35 more games to go. Does it mean anything? I mean, maybe psychologically it might affect the players in the upcoming games, but really, I think you can just go, do you know what? Arsenal going downfield, coming up against their title rivals, losing, oh well, 1-0, amazing world-class free kick. But then Liverpool will go, okay, do you know what? We didn't play particularly well. Arsenal dominated that first half, but at the end of the day, we won it. And, you know, both sides can make up a positive narrative and spin it the way they wanted to. And we're just going to have to wait and see. I mean, Salah's going to AFCON. What impact is that going to have? Arsenal are still continuing to pick up a few injuries. What impact is that going to have? There's so much more to go in the season, and we really won't know. And I think this one we can just leave up to the comments, I think.
Yeah, that sounds like a good shout to me. Shall we run through our completed table just very briefly? So we've got in 20th, Burnley, 19th, Leeds, 18th, Wolves, 3 teams going down. Then we've got Sunderland, Brentford, West Ham and Fulham in 17th through to 14th. In 13th, Palace, 12th, Forest, 11th is Everton. Then into the top half, we've got Bournemouth in 10th, Brighton in 9th, Villa in 8th. Then we've got United in 7th, Newcastle in 6th, Spurs up in 5th, potentially getting Champions League football, Chelsea in 4th, City in 3rd, and then a TBC by the comment section to fill out our first and second. Mev has gone for Liverpool for the title, and I've gone for Arsenal.